Buckle up, everyone, because we're hitting the gas and taking a deep dive into a real high-octane success story in the automotive world. Specifically, we're going to be looking at Renault and their recent winning streak.
Yeah, it's a story that has everybody talking. Renault just scored its second Car of the Year award in a row,
Back to back.
back to back. And that's a feat that's only happened one other time in the award's, 62-year history.
Yeah, crazy. So for this deep dive, we've got a couple sources to guide us. We've got excerpts from Calpurnia notes and an article from Lego.it, an Italian publication. And both of these sources point to one man as kind of like the potential mastermind behind all this, Luca de Meo, Renault's CEO.
Yeah, and Calpurnia Notes actually calls him the extra man at Renault, implying that his leadership has been like the secret ingredient to this winning formula. And it's not just this year, Renault snagged that Car of the Year award last year as well, and they even grabbed second place after being a slump for like 18 years.
Wow, what a comeback story. So what is it about de Meo? Is he some kind of automotive whisperer?
Well, there's definitely something intriguing about his track record. Lego.it points out that De Meo was actually also there when Fiat, his former employer, won Car of the Year back in 2008 with the Fiat 500.
Oh, interesting. So this isn't his first time at this rodeo.
Nope.
It really makes you wonder if there's something about his approach, like his leadership style, that just keeps leading to success.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's definitely worth exploring. But before we get too caught up in De Meo's magic touch, let's maybe take a quick detour into the history of this Car of the Year award. Lego.8 gives us a little background on that. So it all started back in the early 1960s, and in the beginning, British brands were kind of dominating. But then it expanded to include Italian, German, and French manufacturers.
Gotcha. So it wasn't always a global thing. When did that start to change?
Well, the first non-European winner was the Ford Escort back in 1981, but it wasn't until 1993 that Japanese manufacturers really got in on the action. Nissan ended up taking home the award for the Micra, so it's been like a gradual evolution towards this truly international competition.
Makes sense. And speaking of the international stage, I thought it was really interesting that de Meo actually chose to let his team take center stage when they received the award in Brussels.
Yeah, now that's a really interesting detail. It says a lot about his leadership style and the importance he puts on teamwork.
Totally. I mean, Lego.it mentions some of the key players like Philippe Krief. He's the head of technology for the Renault Group and also the CEO of Alkane. And he's got a pretty impressive resume with time spent at Ferrari, Maserati, and even Alfa Romeo.
Right, and then there's Gilles Vidal. He's the head of design, and he spent a decade at Peugeot. And of course, we can't forget about Fabrice Cambolive, who's head of the Renault brand.
Wow. Talk about assembling a dream team. It seems like de Meo knows how to attract the best talent from all over the industry.
And it's not just about attracting talent, it's about like developing it too. Lego.it points out that De Meo and Krief were actually both considered rising stars under the late Sergio Marchionne at Fiat. They were even part of this group called the Marchionne Boys.
Wow, so they've got this shared experience, this mentorship under this legendary figure in the automotive world. You really got to wonder if that's part of what's fueling their success over at Renault.
It's definitely a compelling possibility. And it kind of raises another question, right? Like, how does this team, with all their diverse backgrounds and their shared history, plan to tackle the challenges of the future, especially in this world of electric vehicles that's like rapidly evolving?
That is a great question because, the automotive world's changed a lot, especially with Tesla and Chinese EV manufacturers making such huge waves.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where things get really interesting.
Can anyone even compete with Tesla, with their brand recognition and technology?
Right, that's the million-dollar question. And Calpurnia notes actually suggest that De Meo might be the only one in the whole industry with the vision and the guts to really challenge Tesla, and not to mention the rise of these Chinese EV manufacturers.
Wow, that's a pretty bold statement. What makes them think that de Meo has that kind of power?
Well, it seems to be a mix of things, his ability to put together a world-class team, his experience in navigating this crazy automotive world, and maybe most importantly, his willingness to take risks and shake things up a bit.
Yeah, but it's one thing to put a team together, and it's another to actually come up with a winning strategy and execute it. Do our sources give any insight on what Renault's actual game plan is?
That's where things get really interesting. Now, our sources don't give any specific details about, Renault's EV strategy, but they do offer some clues. Remember how Lego.it talked about that global aspect of the Car of the Year award and how late Japanese manufacturers entered the competition?
Yeah, they weren't really in the running until the 90s.
Exactly. And if you think about it, that's kind of similar to what's happening now with EV manufacturers. Tesla was this early disruptor, but now everyone's jumping in, right? We've got established players like Renault and all these newcomers from China. Everyone wants a piece of that pie.
So you're saying Renault is entering a market that's already pretty competitive, Kind of like what those Japanese manufacturers did back in the day.
Exactly. And that historical context might actually have some valuable lessons for Renault as they, navigate this new world. They can't just rely on their past successes. They got to innovate, they got to stand out, and they got to appeal to this new generation of consumers who are really drawn to EVs.
Yeah, I see what you mean. But how are they going to do that? Are they focusing on a specific niche, or maybe a certain type of technology, or a more competitive price point?
Those are all really great questions, and unfortunately, our sources don't really give us concrete answers. But if we look back at De Meo's career, at his leadership style, we can maybe start to piece together some potential strategies. Remember, this is the same guy who helped Fiat win Car of the Year with the 500, and that car was stylish and it was affordable.
Yeah, the Fiat 500 was a massive success. It appealed to so many different types of buyers, not just car enthusiasts.
Exactly. So it's definitely possible that De Meo is trying to replicate that success with Renault's EV offerings. Maybe they're focusing on designing EVs that aren't just like technologically advanced, but also aesthetically pleasing and accessible to a wider market.
That would be a smart move for sure. I mean, Tesla's got that luxury EV market cornered, but there's still so much opportunity to capture the hearts and minds of everyday people who want a car that's affordable, looks good, and is good for the environment.
And don't forget about De Meo's team, right? He's got people with experience from Ferrari, Maserati, Peugeot, Alfa Romeo.
That's a lot of expertise. Sounds like he's strategically built a team that can really draw on the best of European automotive design and engineering.
And maybe by combining that European heritage with, cutting-edge EV technology, Renault can carve out a unique space in the market. They could become like a bridge between the traditional automotive world and this electric future.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. It's like they're taking the best of both worlds and creating something completely new.
And that's what makes this whole story so compelling. It's not just about, Renault winning some award. It's about a company, even an entire industry that's at a crossroads. It's about this clash between tradition and innovation, between these established giants and these disruptive newcomers.
And at the heart of it all is Luca de Meo. He's the guy who seems to have this knack for exceeding expectations and pulling off these incredible turnarounds. But even with his leadership, even with a great team, there are going to be challenges along the way.
Oh, for sure. The automotive world is incredibly competitive, and that EV market is changing constantly. Renault's success is not guaranteed by any means.
So the question is, can they keep this momentum going? Can they really become a dominant force in this electric future? Or will they get swept away by all this disruption? Yeah, it does feel like we're seeing this major shift happening. Not just for Renault, but for the whole car industry.
It really does. It's like we're standing right on the edge of a paradigm shift, and Renault, with De Meo at the helm, they're trying to put themselves right at the front of this whole transformation.
It's exciting stuff, but also kind of makes you nervous, I mean, the stakes are so high. The choices they make now, those are going to have consequences for years to come.
Absolutely. And that's why this story is so important, not just for, car enthusiasts, but anyone who's interested in leadership, in innovation, and in how to handle these huge changes that are disrupting everything.
You're right. It really highlights how important it is to adapt and change, no matter what industry you're in. If you want to survive, if you want to succeed, you got to evolve.
And in a way, Renault's story is like a mini version of that bigger trend. They're dealing with all the same forces that are shaping industries all over the world. New tech, changing consumer tastes, and all these new competitors popping up.
So what can we learn from all this? What are the big takeaways from this deep dive into Renault's winning streak?
Well, I think one of the most important things is that global perspective. Renault's success with that Car of the Year award and their goals for the EV market, it shows they get it. They understand they need to think beyond just their usual boundaries.
Exactly. They're not just competing with other European car companies anymore. It's global now. They're up against companies from all over, each with their own strengths and their own ways of doing things.
And that brings us to another important point, the power of diversity. De Meo putting together this team with people from Ferrari, Maserati, Peugeot, Alfa Romeo. It tells you he sees the value in bringing together all those different viewpoints, all those different approaches to design and engineering.
It's like he created this fusion of automotive brilliance, the best of Italian, French, and German car traditions, all in one place.
Exactly. And that kind of mixing of ideas, it can be so powerful, especially in an industry that's changing so fast.
So bringing it all back to our listeners, what does this all mean for them? Why should they care about Renault's winning streak and what they're doing in the EV market?
I think it boils down to this. Renault's story is a story about the future. It's a sneak peek into what can happen when a company embraces change, challenges the way things have always been done, and isn't afraid to think big.
It's like this inspiring reminder that Even when you've got tough competition and all this disruption, innovation, and determination, that can still win the day.
And that's a message that goes way beyond just cars. It's for all of us, no matter what we're passionate about, no matter what we're trying to achieve.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Renault, we want to leave you with this. What bold moves are you going to make to shape your own future? What paths are you going to take that maybe nobody else has taken?
What's your winning streak going to look like?
Those are some great questions to think about, and we hope this deep dive gave you some fuel, some inspiration to go after your own ambitions. Thanks for joining us on this exciting ride, and don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into all sorts of fascinating topics. We'll catch you next time.